Conference. After over 20 years of Lib Dem conference attendance, I am a first-time speaker. Two rounds of applause, my first minute. This is going well. Excellent. It is my pleasure to be speaking to you today, back with the Lib Dem family. This is a chance to share what we are doing in Hull, a chance to talk about the importance of local government and local Lib Dem councillors for local residents, and a chance to look at the challenge ahead for the party this May. First, a bit about me. Now, if I'd been making this speech back in autumn when it was first planned, I would have been saying I grew up just 15 miles north of Brighton in the city in West Sussex. It is where I first got involved in politics, both in my hometown and working for Norman Baker when he was an MP in his early days. He was a unique individual, and it was in that time that my interest and involvement in political life grew. I learned from Norman the importance of having a distinctive approach and how standing out from the crowd can help you get ahead. Instead, stood here in York, I can say that it is just 30 miles down the road that I've made a life myself in the great city of Hull. I went to get an education and a degree. I stayed for the place, the people, and of course, the chip spice. And if you don't know what that is, then it's just one of the many reasons to call by Hull on your way home and help in our election campaign. For me, there's been nowhere better to have made a life over the last 2 and a bit decades. Hull is a place of great people, a city of potential, one that needs leadership to get it where it deserves to be. That's the challenge we have taken on, and we are determined to tackle it head on. Across the last 20 years, we fought hard to make sure that there is a Liberal presence in Hull. There's been waves of success in that time. My first election saw the group triple in size, from 10 to 29 in one go. 2002 is when the party established itself as the main alternative to Labour in Hull. Now remember, this was back in the heyday of Tony Blair and New Labour. The Labour Party was still popular nationally. But in Hull, after 3 decades of Labour rule, the residents were crying out for change. We offered them that and took the moment to take control. This was not an easy task. It was a new experience for the city, and certainly a new experience for the team who were elected that year. One thing is true, though. We learnt from that experience, and it made us stronger for the years ahead. Come forward to 2006, and we find ourselves the administration again. This time, we come into office with something familiar to Lib Dem groups across the country. We have our 6 to fix. We get to work straight away on that list, making real change that the public will notice, delivering on our offer for Hull. And we made a difference. It may seem odd to say this, but one of the most special headlines from that time was the billboard that declared the council to officially no longer be the worst in the country. We were turning the ship around and working hard for the residents of Hull. Now along comes 2011. I'm sure if you were involved in that election campaign, the memory of an awful night lives on. Inevitably, we, at the coalface in local government, were the first to bear the brunt of unhappiness with the Lib Dems in government. It may not have been us in the ministerial office, but that made no difference to the voters on polling day. 1/3 of our group were kicked out. Now, why have I given you this backstory here today? Why am I not just talking to you about all the wonderful things that we've been doing since we took control again last year? Well, if it hadn't been for the events before 2022, that success last year wouldn't have happened. After the defeat in 2011, we were determined to make sure that it was not going to be repeated. We set about modernising our campaigning approach in Hull. We became more disciplined with the process, making sure candidates were fully aware of what they were signed up to achieve and addressed areas where this did not happen. We were rigorous and effective in turning around the previous year's result. To top it all off, we had fun. I was up for re-election in 2012, and it was one of the most enjoyable campaigns I've ever been involved in. We worked as a team, and there was real clarity for all of us about what we were needed to do. The best bit? It worked. We walked away with 7 wins, a massive improvement on the previous years too. We may have seen the group get smaller, but it was a major step forward, and it showed exactly what we needed to do. Our reputation as a campaigning local party grew significantly in that time, and rightly so. And if I may, I want to just use this moment to pay tribute to all those who've been part of our journey in Hull. There are so many, those in the group now, but many who have been there before, some of whom are in the hall today. Being unusually quiet, actually, by the sounds of it. It may be me here now giving the speech, and it may be me as leader, but it's very much a team in Hull. So fast forward to the last few years. We started winning the popular vote in local elections again in 2019. This set us up for what was to come in the next couple of sets elections. Last May was to see us take control for the first time since we lost in 2011. Now, if you were watching the election night coverage last year, you'd be forgiven for thinking this was some sort of shock result, a freak accident that came from nowhere. We know it was built on a decade of hard work, patience, and determined effort. In Hull, it was time for change, and we had offered Hull the change it needs. Let me tell you, it wasn't just us saying Hull needed a change of approach. It was the community of Hull too. Voters, businesses, and more. Labour had run out of ideas. They had let the voters down, and it was time for them to go. We like to remind people in Hull that the Labour Council had stopped listening to them. As far as Labour was concerned, it was their way or no way. It's not good enough. We are determined to be different. We want to shape a council that puts listening to the community at the heart of what it does. Now, I like to say what a council does is important, but so is the way it does it. We want a council that puts the priorities of the city first, not one that puts its own interests first. You see, with the Lib Dem councils, you get people who will represent you to the town hall, not the town hall to the public. That should be exactly the same when we take the reins of power too. We should always be mindful of what it is the public want to see happen, that we are there to serve. Now, how have we gone about making that a reality? Well, let me tell you, first of all, it's not an overnight job. We know it is going to take time to get the council where we want it to be. Of course, this means the voters of Hull need to give us that time to make those changes. But this year, we've started the job straight away. We carried out one of the biggest ever surveys in the city, with over 22,000 responses to our transport and travel survey, an issue under much scrutiny in the city, and we wanted to address it head on. We set up a crime prevention fund, and this is where Ed was starting to steal some of my best material earlier, but a fund designed to allow groups across the city to tap into it and access funding to enable them to do the sort of schemes they believe will make the difference in their area. We believe the very people who have the solutions to tackling problems in their area are the people who live in it every day. And thanks to the budget passed just a few weeks ago, our set-piece programme to tackle the state of neighbourhoods across the city was born. The Love Your Neighbourhood programme will breathe new life into Hull's communities, giving residents a sense of pride in the area they live in. Hull City Council under the Liberal Democrats, a listening council, one that puts people's priorities first, From transport, crime to the state of local neighbourhoods, we are listening and we are acting. And what do Labour do? Can you believe it? They called these pet projects. They attack us for listening to the concerns of Hull's residents. They show time and time again they are not fit for office in Hull. Well then, if 2022 was about kicking them out, 2023 is all about not letting them back in. Embarrassingly, the Labour leader said we were just renting the city for a year, insulting all those who voted us into power, and frankly, those that didn't too. Our job is to show that this is no one-year wonder, but we're here for the long term. And this is a story repeated across the country, with Labour councillors who have been in for far too long. Now, I know we're aiming to take many seats off the Conservatives in the next general election, whenever that might be. And I fully support the party in trying to beat as many Conservative MPs as possible. But there is a job for our party to do too, in places like Hull, taking on an out-of-touch Labour Party. We will only grow as a party if we are a truly national one able to beat Labour as well as the Conservatives. And I say this as a Northern leader, one keen to see us take on the discredited Labour councils as well as the Conservatives. We should not be seen as some sort of variant of the Labour Party by voters, but a real alternative to both. We shouldn't have some sort of version to beating Labour. I want to beat the Conservatives, but believe me, I want to beat Labour too. I speak with many years of experience on this. Believe me, beating Labour feels good too. Let's not forget that should Labour form the next government, we will be taking them on. Let's be building up those local bases now, ahead of that next general election, in places like Hull, so we are ready for the battles ahead. Of course, I've had enough of this Conservative government to last me a lifetime. As a local government leader myself in an urban northern city, I can see for myself what 13 years of Conservative government has meant. I have had enough of the cuts, the services depleted, and the communities suffering as a result. We have a government that doesn't value the role of local government in supporting communities across the country. But we do. That's why we need to work hard in these local elections to get more Liberal Democrats elected. More Lib Dems who will be fighting hard for their residents. More Lib Dems who will put the community first and not themselves. More Lib Dem councillors leading to more Lib Dem councils so that they can fight hard for the whole town or city, not just certain parts of them, as is too often the case with our opponents. If you are here now, it means you want the party to succeed. The elections this May is our chance to make that happen. Getting out and helping in the next 7 weeks electing more Liberal Democrat councillors. That's my challenge to you. I know you are all up to the challenge. And I tell you what, if you do it right, you can have a whole lot of fun on the way. So let's get out there and deliver those leaflets. Let's get out there and knock on those doors and hit those phones. Let's get out there and win. Thank you.